Ever get that feeling like the world's spinning faster and faster? Like, just trying to keep up with the latest gadgets is a full-time job?
Tell me about it. My teenager makes me feel like a fossil half the time.
Right. Well, today we're diving into a book that tackles that feeling head-on.
Oh, you mean The Singularity Is Nearer by Ray Kurzweil?
That's the one. It's all about how technology is changing at an accelerating rate and what that means for, well, everything.
Kurzweil's really throwing down the gauntlet with this book, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. And he doesn't mince words. He introduces this idea of the law of accelerating returns.
Which basically means things aren't just changing, they're changing faster and faster. It's exponential growth, not linear.
Exactly. It's like those old brick phones we used to have. Like, can you even call them cell
The
phones?
ones that weighed a ton and cost a fortune. Yeah,
And now, look, our phones are practically mini computers, more powerful than the computers that sent people to the moon.
it's mind-blowing when you think about it.
And Kurzweil's point is that this same kind of exponential growth is happening everywhere, not just with phones. It's impacting everything.
Yeah, it's not just about faster gadgets. It's about what those faster gadgets enable us to do.
So what's the big takeaway then? If technology keeps accelerating at this rate, what does the future even look like?
Well, Kurzweil gets into some really mind-bending possibilities. One of the big ones is this idea of brain-computer interfaces.
Wait, brain-computer interfaces? You mean like plugging our brains into the internet?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kurzweil believes we're on the verge of being able to connect our neocortex, which is like the thinking part of our brain, directly to the cloud.
Okay, now you're just messing with me, right? How on earth would that even be possible?
Well, he talks about nanobots, these tiny microscopic robots that can be used to create that connection.
Nanobots. Okay, this is starting to sound like science fiction.
It does, doesn't it? But Kurzweil backs it up with some pretty convincing arguments.
Ah.
He describes the neocortex as this amazingly adaptable structure.
Right, always forming new connections. Like that's how we learn and adapt, right?
Exactly. And he believes that by connecting our neocortex to the cloud, we'd essentially be giving our brains access to unlimited processing power and information.
So instead of just Googling something, we could just think it.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It would be like having the entire internet at our fingertips, literally, or should I say, at our brain tips.
Okay, I'll admit that's both amazing and kind of terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, it really makes you question what it means to be human, doesn't it?
And if our brains are essentially plugged into a global network, what happens to our individuality? Do we all become part of some kind of hive mind?
It's a valid question, and it's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the potential implications of this technology.
So we've gone from faster phones to supercharged brains in the space of like, what, 20 minutes?
Only according to Kurzweil's timeline. But seriously, there's a lot to unpack here.
Maybe we should take a breather for a second, let everyone process this for a moment.
Good idea. We can dive into some of the more practical implications after the break.
All right, so before the break, we were having our minds blown, basically.
Just a typical day here at the Deep Dive, right?
Right. But seriously, brain-computer interfaces, the neocortex on the cloud, it's a lot to take in.
I think it's safe to say that Kurzweil's vision of the future is not for the faint of heart.
It's definitely pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. But speaking of pushing boundaries, all this talk about AI and exponential growth, it makes you wonder about the impact on something a little closer to home. Jobs.
Ah, yes, the age-old question. Will robots take over the world and put us all out of work?
Exactly. It's like every time there's a new technological leap, people start to worry about their jobs being replaced by machines.
Well, it is a valid concern, right? And Kurzweil doesn't shy away from it. He actually compares it to the Luddite movement during the Industrial Revolution.
Oh yeah, when those textile workers were smashing those newfangled looms because they thought the machines were stealing their jobs.
Precisely.
Mm.
And Kurzweil's point is that while technology does displace jobs, it also creates new ones.
So it's not like all the jobs just disappear, there's a shift, right? Like old jobs become obsolete, but new opportunities emerge.
Exactly. Think about it. A couple of decades ago, nobody could have predicted the demand for app developers or social media managers.
Yeah.
Those jobs didn't even exist back then.
That's true. But it's still a little unnerving, right? Like, what if the new jobs that are created require skills that I don't have? What if I can't keep up with the pace of change?
Well, Kurzweil argues that AI will actually free us from a lot of the highly specialized technical work that dominates our lives today.
Really? You mean instead of replacing us, AI will be doing the heavy lifting, leaving us to focus on other things?
That's the idea. He envisions a future where AI handles things like complex data analysis, medical diagnoses, even engineering design, and that frees up humans to focus on things that AI isn't so good at, like creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, that sort of thing.
So instead of competing with AI, we'll be collaborating with it, each playing to our strength.
Exactly. It's a much more optimistic outlook than the whole robots taking over scenario.
I like the sound of that. But even if we're not all destined to become unemployed, there's bound to be some disruption along the way, right?
Absolutely. And Kurzweil acknowledges that. He talks about the need for a strong social safety net to support workers during this period of transition.
Like retraining programs, maybe some kind of universal basic income.
Exactly. He sees it as an investment in the future, helping people adapt to the changing job market and develop the skills they need to thrive in this new world.
It's reassuring to hear that he's thinking about the human side of these technological advancements, not just the cool gadgets and mind-blowing possibilities.
It's a fine line to walk, for sure.
Yeah.
But Kurzweil doesn't shy away from the ethical dilemmas either. In fact, he dedicates a whole chapter to exploring the potential risks of this accelerating progress.
Oh, right. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He talks about things like the potential for AI to be used for malicious purposes, the risks of autonomous weapon systems, even the theoretical possibility of self-replicating nanobots consuming all matter on Earth.
The so-called gray goo scenario.
Yeah, that one still gives me nightmares. But seriously, if we're talking about technology this powerful, we have to be mindful of the potential downsides.
Absolutely. And Kurzweil stresses the need for ethical guidelines and safeguards to be built into AI development from the very beginning. He specifically mentions the Asylum-R AI principles, a set of guidelines developed by leading researchers to ensure AI is developed and used responsibly.
So it's not just about making AI smarter, it's about making it safer.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that these powerful technologies are aligned with our values and used for the benefit of all humankind, not just a select few.
That's a pretty big responsibility, though. I mean, how do you even begin to define ethical boundaries for something as complex as AI?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it becomes even more complicated when you factor in Kurzweil's predictions about radical life extension.
Right, because we're not just talking about living longer, we're talking about fundamentally changing what it means to be human.
And that's a whole other can of worms, isn't it?
You could say that again. Maybe we need another break to wrap our heads around that one. Okay, so radical life extension. We're really going deep now. But before we dive into that, we kind of glossed over the whole singularity thing.
Oh, yes. The singularity. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, often with a mix of awe and trepidation.
And rightly so. I mean, it's a pretty heavy concept. For those who might not be familiar with it, how would you describe the singularity?
Well, in a nutshell, Kurzweil defines it as the point in time when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. And he believes this will trigger an explosion of technological growth that's almost impossible for us to fathom right now.
Basically, things are going to get really, really weird.
That's one way to put it. But Kurzweil sees it as more of a profound transformation than something weird. He believes the lines between human and machine will become increasingly blurred.
So instead of picturing robots taking over the world, should we be imagining a future where humans and AI are seamlessly integrated?
That's more in line with Kurzweil's thinking. He argues that we're already on that path. Just look at how reliant we've become on our smartphones, our computers, the internet. We're already outsourcing so much of our lives to these devices.
It's true. I can't even remember my own phone number half the time. But if that's the case, if we're already on this path towards integration with technology, what does the singularity actually change?
It accelerates the process exponentially. Kurzweil believes that instead of just interacting with AI through our devices, we'll be able to directly interface with it, merge with it even. Imagine enhancing our abilities, expanding our lifespans, connecting with each other in ways we can only begin to imagine.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. Immortality. Really?
Well, maybe not immortality in the literal sense, but Kurzweil does believe that radical life extension is within our reach. He talks about using nanotechnology and biotechnology to repair our bodies at the cellular level, essentially reversing the aging process.
So no more wrinkles or gray hair. Sign me up. But seriously, living for hundreds of years, potentially even longer, that would have huge implications for society, for our relationships, for everything.
Absolutely. Imagine a world where people are living for centuries. Retirement planning would take on a whole new meaning. But it's not just about the practicalities, it's about what it means to be human. If we can essentially cheat death, does life even have the same value? These are questions that Kurzweil believes we need to start grappling with now.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. I mean, we've gone from talking about faster phones to potentially living forever in the space of, what, an hour?
Time flies when you're exploring the future.
Hmm.
But in all seriousness, I think the key takeaway from Kurzweil's book is that the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create through the choices we make today.
So, what choices should we be making?
It starts with awareness, with being informed about the technologies that are being developed and the potential implications of those technologies. It's about engaging in thoughtful discussions about the ethical considerations surrounding AI, about the kind of future we want to build for ourselves and for generations to come.
It's about taking responsibility for the future, not just passively accepting whatever comes our way.
Exactly. The future is not predetermined. It's up to us to shape it.
That's a powerful message and a hopeful one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's definitely given us a lot to think about.
My pleasure. Until next time.